Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
What is ordinary to someone else is extraordinary to a visual artist.
People here in St. Louis love different food.
The goal is not for kids to just have a decent life, but to have a good one.
Today on Spotlight, a new public safety tool that sends real-time 911 information to schools in St. Louis. Plus, an exhibit about everyday life created by 42 local artists. And then we'll take you inside Missouri's premier food truck garden. But first, a new book that hopes to help kids get ready for adulthood. It's Sunday and you're watching the Emmy Award-winning Spotlight. A mother, former teacher, and school leader, Stephanie Malia Kraus, says that while running a high school on the campus of Rankin Technical College, she started thinking about what kids actually need to be ready for adulthood.
I had seen how different that was from meeting the requirements of a high school diploma. You know, that was about completing a degree versus really being ready for life after high school.
She says she realized there was a disconnect, so she wrote an easy-to-read book full of research that talks about COVID, the racial uprising, and economic realities called Making It: What Today's Kids Need for Tomorrow's World.
We have very different kids who have very different lived experiences from our own. And the way in which they're oriented to the world is different. And the way in which the world is operating is different. And so what does that all mean in terms of what they need?
One of the main points really of the book is that what you discovered early on is that sometimes you can't have that vision for yourself. You need the adults around you to have it. You need them to step in and start guiding you in this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote this book for anybody who's raising or working with young people. So this is educators, parents, coaches, counselors. And the reality is many employers and folks in higher education are also parents and grandparents or committed, devoted uncles or aunts. But we as the adults, we actually need a really updated understanding of how the world and workforce are operating and what's happening with kids right now. What is their lived experience? What is that doing to them? And then really, that's kind of the first part of the book. The second is, okay, so what do they need? And the third part is, what do we do about it? What are the things that we as adults do when we come alongside young people?
One of the things that you talk throughout your personal story and also through the book is the importance of mentors and connections, personal connections, which I think is so interesting because this whole digital revolution was supposed to sort of even a playing field in a lot of ways. But the truth is those personal connections, who you know, who you cultivate relationships with, who you stay in touch with, has a massive impact.
Yeah.
And that's something that we as adults can help with and can look for opportunities to help kids with.
Yeah, that's right. And it highlights for me one of the areas that I'm concerned about with the pandemic. There's been a lot of controversial around learning loss. And it's controversial because everybody lost. Some kids lost more, but the starting place, nobody really fully gained this past year. But the thing that was lost, and there shouldn't be argument about it, is that for a number of kids, their ability to build mentorship, friendship, and these sort of relationships that get them scholarships, other internships, it happens during the extras. And those things got cut off. Or they really weren't the same. And so that's the piece that we have to understand. It's not just getting kids back into their school buildings. We have to make sure that those enrichment and extracurriculars, out of school time, after school, summer camp, that has as much attention and investment to getting up and running safely, and then getting the kids who really lost out, because that is a big deal when you ask people, right? Who was it? It was the counselor, it was the coach, it was the after school director who knew them since they were 5, or the summer camp counselor. And teachers have done a heroic job, but the pandemic was not set up for them to deeply invest in the lives of all kids, because they were working obscene hours and having to do, 2-3 times the amount of planning for a crisis learning environment. So we've really got to bolster that youth development piece as we move forward. The book ends by saying that this is the beginning, that the goal is not for kids to just have a decent life, but to have a good one, a great one, a long and livable one. And I think that we can't do that unless the foundation is solid, really solid. The cornerstone is solid, but we can build from there.
Scan the QR code on your screen with your phone's camera to watch the full interview and find out why she says watching a movie from beginning to end can be helpful to kids. Or just head to hecmedia.org. Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
The Parkway School District covers about 64 square miles in St. Louis County. Security is a big undertaking for the 30 schools and additional district buildings. Robbie Winkle is Parkway School's Supervisor of Security. Winkle now has access to high-level security assistance with new software developed by Paul Rauner's St. Louis-based company, Siren GPS.
Siren GPS really allows us to receive early notifications on not only what's going on our property, but around it as well. And that's crucial because we are able to implement our emergency procedures in a more timely manner.
It's called 911 Real-Time Analytics. The pins on the map show 911 calls in real time, informing schools about nearby emergency calls and threats. For the safety of students and staff at building locations as well as bus routes, the real-time notification may lead to activation of school emergency plans. The software drops the pin when 911 operators dispatch first responders to the location.
10-9 the location, please.
The software allows schools to choose locations and types of threats they consider immediate or could escalate, everything from medical emergencies to an active shooter. Before this,
We would have to rely on local law enforcement to notify us and say, hey, we just had an armed robbery at this location.
with this new technology, schools know about a call before police arrive on scene. Parkway is receiving the security software at no charge by participating in the product launch.
911, what's your emergency?
Missouri's Regional Justice Information System, or REGIS, partnered with Siren GPS to offer the technology to public schools in the St. Louis region. Rauner says this tool relies on participation from law enforcement.
Getting law enforcement comfortable with it. They're really the gatekeepers for information from 911. And to a large extent, they're the people that have the information we need to let somebody, the folks at a school know, hey, it's time to lock your school down or evacuate your school, or don't let your kids out yet. Hold up your release at the end of the day because this is nearby and it's dangerous. Parkway Schools has schools that are in 4 different 911 service areas. So for Parkway School Security to see what's happening, they've got to somehow get information from all 4 of those different places where they answer their 911 calls. Otherwise, you can imagine it's challenging.
This map shows another program participant, the Jennings School District.
So this is an incident that happened last night. It's not far from one of these elementary schools. It's a shots fired. It's one of the high threat incidents that if it happened during the school day, they're going to have a protocol for it. They look at the codes that are available from the 911 dispatch answering the calls, and they can pick which ones make sense for them to see when it happens on their property. And then they can look at the list again and decide, all right, if it's not on my property but it's nearby, which ones of those should I see?
Proximity alerts to crimes and traffic accidents also help bus transportation. One recent success for Parkway was a 911 call about power lines down in the roadway.
That was really key to us because we didn't want to put the kids on the bus and just have them sit there. And so that information that we received was really critical.
Some school districts in North St. Louis County are taking part in a research study promoting the safe return to schools during the pandemic.
Project description from the National Institutes of Health was to do an underserved population, and we wanted to really focus in on our predominantly African American school districts, as we wanted to understand and provide, more access to testing to these areas.
Pediatric infectious diseases expert Dr. Jason Newland with Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis is the principal investigator for the Safe Return to School project.
Pattonville, University City, Jennings, Normandy, and Ferguson, Florissant.
Students, staff, and their families in those districts are provided access on school property for drive-through COVID-19 testing 6 days a week. But the study will focus on 16 middle and high schools by examining another level of testing.
Evaluating whether or not weekly screening testing is needed in middle and high schools to prevent COVID-19 transmission.
In order to figure that out, the study randomly selected 8 of the 16 schools for weekly screenings. For those 8 schools, students and staff and their household members are asked to enroll to be tested weekly for asymptomatic COVID-19 infections during the entire school year.
The CDC has recommended that one of the mitigation strategies is screening testing. We need better data. We need more data to say, is that true?
The study is not using nasal swabs. It's all saliva testing that was developed in this research lab at Washington University School of Medicine.
The test is accurate as we would say the swab that does the brain tickler. And we have seen that throughout in our laboratorians and the experts that we've been working with.
You can find the full story about the Safe Return to School study on our website, hecmedia.org.
Go to hecmedia.org for the arts and authors,
Completely accidental because I never set out to write a book.
science and history, culture and community,
It's considered to be the oldest organic farm west of the Mississippi.
education, films,
Finding the coin places the site firmly in the 13th century.
what's happening now around St. Louis, and more. See for yourself at hecmedia.org.
We're at Arts St. Louis in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, and this is our Ordinary Lives exhibition featuring works by 42 St. Louis regional artists from Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa. So the idea behind Ordinary Lives as a visual art exhibition is that we asked artists in the community to respond with visual artworks to the question, how are ordinary lives extraordinary? I feel like artists have a special way of acknowledging and observing the world at large and pointing out details that viewers might not necessarily notice. So what is ordinary to someone else is always extraordinary to a visual artist. I also feel like Ordinary Lives is about relationships. And especially right now, as we keep enduring the pandemic, how maintaining personal relationships and friendships and checking in on our family and friends, whether it's here in St. Louis, in the region, or nationally and internationally, I feel like that's also reflected in the works that are shown in this exhibition. When we ask artists to examine the ordinary, I expect that we're going to have all sorts of interpretations of what ordinary is, but there's also commentary on what we're going through. So there's a piece that says, I'm okay, I'm not okay, and that is definitely something to which we can all relate right now, but also pointing out the little details that make the ordinary something truly special. So that also includes laundry. We have some images that have laundry in them, and those kind of like maybe menial tasks that are factored into our everyday life are also special ways that we interpret the world. And then visual artists are turning that into a lino cut, so a print on paper, and there's a painting, and there's a collage artwork, and they all just happen to be about laundry in general. There's also several images that have people interacting with animals, something that is, again, considered just everyday and ordinary, but when an artist interprets that, then you are shedding light on the special relationships and how important that is, especially now and then during the pandemic, how important a lot of these otherwise minute details are to us, especially because many people are still at home. Ordinary Lives is on view at Art St. Louis through September 9th, and you can learn more about the exhibition and our organization at artstlouis.org.
The St. Louis Symphony plays Mozart later on Spotlight.
My name's Thomas Moore. I go by Buzz, and I'm the secretary of the St. Louis Food Truck Association. Well, the Food Truck Association started many years ago, about 10 years ago. At that time, there was only about 7 or 8 trucks, as I understand it, in the association, or in the St. Louis area.
In 2011, there wasn't a food truck industry. It was a lot of people going, well, what's that? And restaurants thinking that they're going to get robbed of business. Just overall very hesitant of the community to accept this as a thing. But of course, that wasn't the case, and food truck community has grown to over 140 trucks in the St. Louis area. My name is Brian Hardesty. I'm the managing partner of 9 Mile Garden. So it's a food truck garden. What that means to us is a place for food trucks to come on a daily basis for lunch and dinner and serve the community.
Well, actually 9 Mile kind of saved my business during COVID because everything else dried up, and if it wasn't for them, I probably would have closed.
For a while we had to shut down for about 2 months. We had to reinvent ourselves, and we were one of the first trucks that started visiting neighborhoods. Kind of joked around and we called it Won't You Be Our Neighbor, after Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And that's kind of what kept us afloat for quite a while until we could start going back to some type of normalcy. And then we started visiting 9 Mile Food Truck Park.
At first, and we were on total shutdown. So you had to have the resources capital to make it through 2 months of non-activity. And then as they opened up the restaurants to curbside, we worked with the City of St. Louis Health Department to ensure that food trucks were considered curbside, that we, in a national disaster, are one of your best food providers possible. Not only are we covered by all health departments, but we're able to go to where the masses are.
Oddly enough, COVID accentuated the ability of food trucks to be able to service people in that kind of environment. I think that restaurants have come to understand that food trucks complement the restaurant industry in St. Louis rather than are something that we kind of take away.
Trucks are becoming more relied on than they were in the past.
People here in St. Louis love different food. Of course, people go to chains, but they really like restaurants, food trucks that are local to them. So that's a big thing, and that's a big reason for our success with the truck.
The thing I think that draws people to food trucks is that it's open air and the variety. There's so many different varieties of food.
I find it exciting. I love to see people's faces when they taste the food. So yeah, it's very rewarding.
People just get excited about them. Still, we'll have lines of people at food trucks every night for dinner. So, that hasn't changed. In fact, I think it's growing.
And I'd say what I'd like to say to the public is thank you for coming out to the food trucks all through COVID and keeping the local small businesses in operation.
For content that keeps you coming back for more, go to hecmedia.org. Be entertained. Get inspired. Learn something new. Connect with your community. Go in depth with experts. And your favorite authors. For original programming and award-winning content, go to hecmedia.org.
Hi, I'm Nikki Gulley, and I am a contemporary impressionist. You can see behind me, I got a couple paintings up, mostly interested in painting landscapes, and I'm working with palette knife and a lot of thick paint, so they end up having a lot of texture, helps bring the subject matter to life. I'm interested in landscapes mainly because I find being in nature so cathartic. We're in such a digital world these days. It's just nice to unplug, be out in nature, and just connect and feel the beauty and hear the sounds and just reflect and have more quiet time. most of the things that I paint have been inspired by some places that I've been, but I do take a lot of liberties, and sometimes I have sketches or photos and memories, and that will be a starting point for me. And then I'm working on canvas, and I'll do a sketch in charcoal, and then I'll start working with layers and layers of paint, working kind of thin to thick, and building up more and more texture as I go. What I'd really love is for people to feel joy, serenity, and hope. I'm trying to connect people with nature, and I use a lot of vivid colors and color surprises to kind of add to that energy and that feeling of hope. I just want people to feel good when they look at the paintings.
I'm Jeff Zachman, and I'm a kinetic metal sculptor. The sculptures that I do are primarily stainless steel frames that have tracks that balls run down through the tracks and through gravity-powered devices where they reach the bottom and then are lifted back up to the top by motors just to complete that cycle. It started actually when I was about 8 years old. There was a large pile of dirt by my house, and I would go out with my sisters and my friends and with a handful of marbles and make trails and tunnels for marbles. Much later, when I was in college, I was studying to be a potter, actually, and I started making things out of clay, and it was fun. Didn't work real well just because of the limitations of clay. And then after about 15 years of being a potter, I thought, why don't I try this again, but why am I using clay? So I started using metal, and it just took off on me. Within 6 months, I didn't have time to do any pottery anymore at all. The way I'll make the piece, I kind of decide on the size, and then I'll put pieces of metal together and shuffle them around until I get something I like. I use a lot of found metal, so it depends on what I cut out of what. Sometimes it's part of a farm implement or a lot of 55-gallon drums. So I'll build the framework for it first, and then I'll add a lift system onto that framework. And then I start at the top and work my way down, kind of working out the bugs as I go, building towards the bottom. And then when I get all the way to the bottom, I'll take it apart and clean it, and then put it back together and then test it and do any tweaking and things like that from there. My work is about happiness and making people happy. One of the things that I love about my artwork and why I like going to shows like the St. Louis Art Fair is that I can see the people experiencing it. People will come into my booth and you can see just a whole new persona they take on. I like to think almost it brings them all back to kindergarten in a way. You'll see strangers talking to each other. People are smiling and laughing. I just love that. That's what I live for. And that's what I feel my work is really about.
Scan the QR code on your screen to meet more artists that will be at this year's St. Louis Art Fair, September 10th through the 12th. You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight. This video brought to you in partnership with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Visit slso.org to see more from the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Next week, what's new at the St. Louis Art Fair in Clayton? Plus, celebrating people who have shaped and inspired us with Flags for Heroes. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.